So how often then should maintenance of the scale happen, and are we actually keeping up as a country? Let's speak further with this, or about this in fact, with the SA Water Chamber CEO Benoit Leroy. Benoit, a very good evening to you. Good to have you on Newzroom Afrika as always. So let's begin with the basics, the sort of maintenance that's being conducted in Johannesburg this week and why it's so important.
Evening to your team and to the viewers. I wouldn't call this maintenance really. I would call it rectifying design errors and system deficiency issues where, we've had rapid urbanization and what's happening is with crumbling infrastructure, we're having to rely on redundancy or backup systems, and this is where the tie-ins are coming in. So these are symptoms of, 2 decades, maybe 3 decades of inadequate asset rejuvenation and extension. And the Water and Sanitation Master Plan published in 2018 spoke then to 900 billion rand required to get us into water and sanitation, security. So this is part of the greater picture, and it's inconvenient. It's really unknown in industrial society to have this type of outage. And I think it's the tip of the iceberg in a cold and snowy Gauteng.
Tip of the iceberg. Give us a sense then of the state of water infrastructure overall in Johannesburg, Gauteng, and in fact the rest of the country, and where else much of this quote-unquote rectifying of past mistakes needs to happen, and needs to happen urgently.
Yeah, generally speaking, our assets have been given between a C- and a D by the Consulting Engineering Fraternity of South Africa on the latest scorecard. So it's well below acceptable norms. And, 900 billion rand to reinstate water security in South Africa is a big number. And so it's double Eskom's debt. That's money not we have to find, it's people's pockets we have to find to replenish it, because we've underinvested over the last 2 decades. We also leak. And it's really a symptom of what we've been doing is because the infrastructure is old, we leak half our water in Gauteng. So, bulk water providers like Grand Water, for every 100 litres they pump into Joburg or Tshwane or Ekurhuleni system, 50 litres is lost into the ground. Most of it, 80-90% is actually physical leaks. The rest is billing issues and a bit of theft and the likes, but that's not really what the issue is. So we call that non-revenue water, and it's gone up from 35% 10 years ago to 45-50% now. So the infrastructure is in a dire state, and apart from the city of Cape Town, we're really not looking good. But having said that, there's ways of sorting it out. It just has to be made a priority.
Whose fault is it, though, that the infrastructure is in such a poor state and that so much water is being lost or wasted, in fact, when we know the reality for some South Africans is that they simply don't have clean drinking water?
Our constitution is very clear. The delivery of water and sanitation services is local government's mandate. So, we're not pointing fingers. The fact is the constitution says local government is responsible. So that's what it is. If you want to look behind that, it's us, because we are the ones who have elected the government who has not delivered, on the day. So we've got to all look at each other and say, how do we sort it out, hold government to account, and we need to start prioritizing and not accepting mediocre service in what is a very complex, energy generation is fairly simplistic compared to water, and but we need energy and water. We need both to work together, and they're extremely complex. It takes 10 to 20 years to design and implement and start operating new water infrastructure. It's not an overnight thing. So it's taken 30 years to get here. It's going to take us 10 to 20 years to get us out of it when we start. And we haven't started yet. So this is a priority item that we have to do.
And the work that's being conducted in Johannesburg this week then covers quite a vast area where people will either have low water pressure or have to go without water at all until possibly Friday. Is it possible to do this work without that level of inconvenience?
It's, if we'd done it in the first place, the inconvenience wouldn't exist today, but that's water under the bridge, literally. Water systems are not like electrical systems. You don't switch them on and off. what happens, you fill the reservoirs and to their maximum. Half of it leaks between the reservoir and the consumer's meter. So we must remember that. So we only have half of the storage we think we have. So that's the first problem we shouldn't be having. And the other thing is that once the system runs dry, you can then work on it. There's no other way of doing it. Now, these systems are not made to run dry. So when you've done the work, which is 1 or 2 days, now it's going to take you 2, 3, 4, 5 days to refill it. And you've got to do it without damaging the system because you get water hammer. So air compresses, water doesn't. And when you get this water hammer, these pressure shock waves in the system, the old pipework tends to fall apart, crumble, and leak. So you've got to do it very carefully. You've got to bleed the air out the system, and you've got to let the system build up. It's designed to be wet 100% of the time. So it's extremely difficult. The actual work is a day or two, but that's not where the issue is. You've got to refill the system. So that's where, compared to electricity, it's very complex. And this is why we design systems with redundancy from the start. We plan for rapid urbanization and the likes in the early days because the impact then is smaller than what it is now. So we're living now with neglect for the last couple of decades. And, we need to look at ourselves and say, let's change it. We need to change it. The technology's there, engineering's there. We just have to have the political will to do it and to depoliticize our basic services. They are too politically influenced. We have to depoliticize them.
How do we do that? How do we depoliticize them, as you say, in a very political country?
I think that this is part of democratic evolution, and we're in the early stages, and we're learning how to work in a democracy. But what we've got to do is and it talks to the cadre issue, is that you employ people who are fit for the job. And we need the best people in the world to work in what is a very complex situation in water and energy in South Africa. Not the best in South Africa, the best in the world. And the only way of doing that is to attract the best. They need to be appointed within the administration of government, and where politicians do not and are not able to fiddle, with these appointments. So we bring them in 5 or 10-year contracts, performance-based contracts, and we impart the knowledge locally. But the politicals, it's like when the board changes in a company, you don't change all the middle management. This is what happened to South Africa. We must stop doing that. When the board changes, we leave the senior management and the like, and we bring in a new board and we carry on. We need to do that, and I think it's an evolutionary process that we are learning a very hard and expensive way of doing.
Benoit, good to speak to you with the SA Water Chamber. Thank you for your time tonight.